Sight for a date.
Hello and welcome back to your Pennsylvania Dutch Minute. Doug here with you. Another episode coming, and today's episode's going to be a little different and a departure from what we're used to. Bear with me. There's a very famous Canadian television personality by the name of Rick Mercer. For years, he had a show in Canada on the CBC that was similar to our Daily Show with Jon Stewart, where he would take a look at the news that was going on throughout Canada and around the world and make fun of news stories, make fun of politicians. And then he always had some really good stories too that were happening throughout his country. He was really, really great. I have to admit that luckily, I mean, most Americans aren't familiar with him or his show, but he did have it available on YouTube, so I was able to watch it from every week, and I loved it. I absolutely loved the show. I loved him. I loved his personality, everything about it. But so most Americans aren't aware of who he was or who he is. He's still alive, and his program. However, he had a segment on his show every week that he just called Rants, and they would film him in an alleyway of somewhere in Toronto, and it would be a topic that was current, something that was going on, and for about a minute straight or a minute and a half, he would just rant at the camera. He never got vulgar. He never. It was always his opinion coming through, and by the end of it, you were always like, that was really well said. And they always were. They were always really well argued and well said. He didn't come off as a crazy nut job that was just rambling about the government. Anyway, these rants always, every episode, was always one of the things I look forward to the most because he was so articulate in his opinion of whatever the topic of the week was. Now, I am not saying that I have the ability to say a speech or something and everyone's gonna be like, yeah, that's great. In the event that I can, then let me know. Maybe I'll run for office. But in any event, this week's Your Pennsylvania Dutch Minute is an homage to Rick Mercer's rants. Because of something that I read this week online. Now, I might anger some people with this video, and that's okay. You can leave your comments down below and tell me why I'm an idiot or tell me how wrong I am or whatever. But you also feel free to support me, but whatever. All right, so here's the deal. I was on Facebook this week, and as many of you know, there's a lot of Facebook groups tied in with Pennsylvania Dutch. There's Pennsylvania Dutch and Proud. There's ones dealing with the language, etc. If you're on Facebook, you know about this. But anyway, there was one of those groups, and I don't remember which one it was. Someone posted, or a conversation started about, Pennsylvania Dutch English, how we have these Pennsylvania Dutch words that have crept into English, like rutsch, to slide over. So you're sitting down, you talk to somebody, you want them to move over a little bit. You say, hey, why don't you rutsch over a little bit? These situations where we use Pennsylvania Dutch words in common day English. And the conversation then went on about people were telling stories about, growing up, they had no idea that these words were Pennsylvania Dutch. They just thought they were regular English words until they maybe moved away from southeastern Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania Dutch country, and then they were somewhere, I don't know, in Florida, and they told someone to rutsch over, and they looked at him like, what the heck's that mean? So it was an incident like that, and the actual incident had to do with a parent who said that their child came home from school, and they might have been working on homework or an assignment or something, and the student was, of course, writing this in English, the child, and they put a Pennsylvania Dutch word in. I don't remember what the word was. Maybe it was Dopic or something like that. A word that, is a Pennsylvania Dutch word. And the comment was made right away that the parent said, oh, you can't use that, erase that because that's not an English word. So here's where I'm going to go off. And I'm, okay, bear with me. I completely understand why that parent said that. And I am not chastising that parent for making that decision. I am now going to look at this situation and many other situations similar to this because it's happened for generations and give my take on it as a 39-year-old Pennsylvania Dutchman living in the United States of America. For generations, the Pennsylvania Dutch language has been, has been under pressure. Let's use that. I don't want to say oppressed, but put under pressure by the greater society as a whole. That post-World War II, we know our history, that was really the generation there of children growing up that were the lost generation. They were the generation growing up in the late 40s and the 50s and the 60s, where the vast majority of Pennsylvania Dutch speakers decided not to pass the language on. You know it. You talk to people like, oh, my grandparents and my parents spoke Pennsylvania Dutch, but only when they didn't want us to know what was going on. And then a lot of people say, but actually, I knew what was going on. And then they'd get mad when I told them what I knew. I mean, I've heard a million of these stories. And I understand why that generation did that. This push to be American and assimilating into society. I understand that. Somehow, by the grace of God, our language has survived. And it's survived multiple generations of making that decision, because a language, once you cut one generation off, it's almost impossible to bring a language back. Minority languages around the world have that struggle now. Native American languages are going through it. Other languages like Louisiana Creole and other languages throughout the United States, immigrant languages and languages in other countries, these minority languages, once you lose a generation, it's a huge fight to maintain it. Somehow, I guess just enough of us were stubborn enough and thick-headed Pennsylvania Dutchmen enough that we didn't completely lose it. And that is how we had words that took, from the Pennsylvania Dutch language that came into modern English, like Rutsch, like Doppik, like, I don't know, Roodriebe, I don't know. There's lots of word examples out there. So I understand why that generation made that decision. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying I understand it. I can put myself in their shoes. We just got done fighting these 2 world wars with an enemy that was, Germany was the enemy in both. This idea of being German and showing pride in your German ethnicity, of course, wasn't a popular thing to do. And, we have always been a pretty humble people, I think, for the most part, we could say. Specifically our plain brothers and sisters, of course. But even us non-plain Pennsylvania Dutch, we tended to be, we decorated our barns and we were proud of who we were, but we didn't necessarily go around shouting and carrying our Pennsylvania Dutch flag around saying, yeah, look at us. So here we are today. It's 2019 America, and we do have these small vestiges of our language that have maintained themselves in modern day English. Here is where I'm going to really get on my soapbox. You have a son or a daughter or a grandchild that uses one of these words. You need to embrace that. And we need to embrace that. And instead of saying, oh, erase that word, and this is me speaking, and I'm not attacking this parent, I want that to be very clear, this is me speaking, I would say to that child, that's great, I'm so glad you used that word. And just a warning, you're going to go to school tomorrow and maybe your teacher or maybe your friends don't know what that word is. Here's an opportunity to teach them about it and say, well, Mrs. Smith, Doppik is a word in Pennsylvania Dutch that means clumsy. Isn't it a cool word? And then everybody can say it, and then you can start using it, and then you're passing the language on. Are you passing on the entire language? No, of course not. But you're passing on one word, and one word is something. It is something, and it just proves that we exist, that we've existed, that our language is real, that it's not some made-up mumbo-jumbo that people come to Pennsylvania and think, listen to these stupid people speaking this really old, weird language. Is it really a language? Blah. No, we need to be proud of who we are. And here's where I make this argument with a lot of people, and right away they jump in, or I get the argument thrown back at me. Look, we're Americans first. That's what you need to be. You need to be patriotic of Americans. Teddy Roosevelt, who I admire greatly, has one quote that I don't agree with him on, and it said something like, in our country, in America, there are no 50-50s. You are either all American or you're not. There's no hyphenated Americans. That might be another rant video for me, because I would make the argument that it is okay to be a hyphenated American. It doesn't make you any less patriotic, and it doesn't make you any less of an American. That's a video maybe for another day, and maybe that one will even get even more hate mail than this one might. My point of this rant is, when you have these incidences where you can, let's say it, show off your linguistic heritage, show off your ethnic background, show off your culture, do it. Do it. Do it. If it's something as simple as putting one word on a piece of homework for helping your son or daughter or your grandson or granddaughter, do it. You're passing it on. I love and appreciate that when you look on these groups on Facebook, the big message is all the food that we love, and how the great memories that come back from grandma's kitchen and this pie and this cake and this type of food. We're super proud about passing that on. Why aren't we proud about our linguistic heritage being passed that on to? Because that's part of us, and I would argue that, that's a major part of who we are as Pennsylvania Dutch. Yes, the vast majority of us, don't speak the language anymore. We've lost it, or maybe we're coming back and we're trying to learn a little bit here and there. My point is, and here's the rant. I've been ranting, but here's my main point, and this video is going way too long. I apologize, but I get really fired up about this. Use those words and use them proudly. And don't be ashamed of it. We have been here in this country for 300 plus years. We fought in every one of its wars. We have led innovation in this country. People like Conrad Weiser, who helped establish peace between the Native Americans and the colonists. We have the invention of the Conestoga wagon and the Pennsylvania long rifle. Two things that without, I would argue, would have slowed down our advancement as a colony, or, as colonial America, and through transportation and through weaponry. That's just the beginning. I mean, we have a rich culture and a rich history and a rich language. That is nothing to be ashamed of, and it doesn't make you any less American if you are proud of those things. You can be just as much of an American as anybody else and have that American flag flying in your front yard, which I know a lot of us do, and still be darn proud of being Pennsylvania Dutch and having this language that's so unique. I mean, to me, that's the beauty of America. It truly is. We hear a lot the term, the melting pot. I don't like that term. I don't know if I've ever said that in these videos or not, but this rant's going on way too long. We are not a melting pot. I like to think of America as a quilt. I'll use that Pennsylvania Dutch analogy there. We got a quilt. We think about how you make a quilt. You take individual pieces of fabric, you sew them together, and individually, they still maintain their individual characteristic, whether it's a red sliver or a yellow sliver or a flower. But they come together and they're joined with other parts to make one giant thing. One giant thing that we can step back and say, that's a quilt. Yes. That's America. But then you look at that quilt and you can see these individual colored pieces. And that, to me, those are those cultures that make up this beautiful country that we live in. And gosh darn it, one of those pieces is us, the Pennsylvania Dutch. And we have a rich story to tell, a rich culture to share, and a rich heritage to be proud of. And I hope that you're proud of it. I know that a lot of you are. So here's my final point. Use those words that you know. Tell people about them. And if you use one and people are like, what's that? There's an opportunity for you to share our story. And even if it's just a little bit, like Dopic means clumsy. That's sharing our story. That's sharing who we are as a people. It's not the whole story, but it's a piece of the story. And a piece of that story being passed on is better than nothing being passed on at all. So, do it. Just do it. Use those words. Be proud of it and pass them on to the next generation and to people that aren't Pennsylvania Dutch. Let the hate mail commence. But I'll take those comments. If you have an idea for a future video, email me, because I'm always looking for new topics. I'm going to have later this year, I'm going to try and have some guests come in and do some guest videos. There are more cooking videos coming down the road. I know a lot of people wanted those. I just haven't had time to make any of those, but I promise you there will be more as we move into fall and winter. I'll have much more time in my house to do those kinds of things, so we'll take care of that. But if you have an idea, please email me. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe so you can get an update every time a new video is posted, and share with your friends. And from now until then, keep practicing your Pennsylvania Dutch. Till the next time. Be proud of who we are as people. It doesn't make us any less American. And Mox Good.
Mox Good.